CEO of AMCHAM Trinidad and Tobago, Neeraj Tiwari, joins us on the Zoom line for the budget analysis. It continues because indeed lots of different talking points and organizations are weighing in. So let's welcome Mr. Tiwari on the program. Great to see you, Neeraj. It's been quite a long time, but I'm happy you're back with me here on the Morning Brew.
Hi, morning, Jace. Good morning to everyone in studio, and of course in your virtual audience, your television audience, online and free to air. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Indeed, the pleasure's ours. Now I'm looking at AMCHAM's statement where you recognize that the minister tried to balance economic revitalization with, of course, the prolonged reduced revenue. But on the same breath too, you also are calling for clarity and more details with certain decisions made via the budget, especially with the CLICO development. I want to give you a chance to expand on what you would have heard last week and what you think are the good, bad, and indifferent concerning budget 2024-2025.
Yeah, I mean, every year we start off by talking about the budget really is the most comprehensive statement of policy that the government would engage in on an annual basis, and therefore it covers a number of things. We understand the economic situation that we're in, the realities of lower prices, lower production volumes of our main source of revenue, which is gas and oil, and therefore petrochemicals as well, and the need therefore to manage expenditure in that regard. We think that the emphasis, or at least the acknowledgement that there needs to be more emphasis on crime fighting was important. Some of the statements from the government were a little mixed over the last few months on that. But crime remains the number one issue facing the economy, facing the society. Unless we get crime under control and to acceptable levels, acknowledging that you'll never get to zero crime, but we need to get as close to zero as possible. Economic recovery is going to be more challenging. And so we need to address the scourge of crime. We included in that, of course, is white collar crime, because that enables what we see as street crime and those kinds of things. So crime has to be the major focus. Coupled with that, digital transformation, so the announcements of e-passports and electronic forms, which are long overdue and which we had started the process of more than 10 years ago. I think we need to ensure that those things happen sooner rather than later, and we can't just make announcements and not follow through. So if we see those things happening, then we would see some real progress, I think, in the economy.
You know, we mentioned crime, and I want to take it back to budget and budgetary measures. There are many who suggest crime and the impact of crime, and what we're seeing is because of this lack of equity. There's a correlation between what happens with people's actual circumstance and what they're willing to do to survive. Any measures inside that budget at all that could at least bring some equity into the conversation and keep the middle class within its structure? Because there are many who also suggest the middle class is holding on via a string. What's your take on equity and its correlation to crime?
Well, I mean, there are different views on that. I'm not a criminologist. I think that from what I've seen, what I've read, what I've heard over the years, detection is the biggest deterrent to crime. There are many countries in the world where there are high levels of poverty and crime is not as high as ours. So while there might be a loose correlation, it's not, from what I've seen, a direct correlation and a causality.
Yeah,
I think the issue of equity in a broader sense, meaning that if people think that there is the ability to commit big crimes, as in stealing from the state, engaging in corruption, using power to disadvantage people with relatively less power, and that the people who do so can get away with impunity, there is a likelihood of an increased discontent. But then you have authoritarian regimes where that happens and crime is lower. So it's about detection prosecution and holding people to account for crime at all levels. I think more than anything else. On the issue of the middle class, I think that is in fact a concern at the moment. I think that the fixed income earners in the middle income bracket are in fact under some pressure, and that's why we say if we fix crime and we use digital transformation to make things easier and allow for more expansion of economic activity, of better delivery of government services, we're likely to see an ease of some of the pressures. And what do we mean by that? So if you fix crime and people can enjoy their lives, open businesses a little longer or different times, can walk the streets, can engage in recreational activities with more comfort, do not have to spend on various types of security in the same way, that's going to be an ease. And if you improve government services as well as enable the private sector to do more through the real introduction of technology in ways that matter to people, it's going to make the whole economy a little easier, and therefore hopefully reduce some of the strain. And in addition to all of that, of course, is making sure that you have efficiency of government spend across ministries. We liked, although I'm not sure that a budget is necessarily the place for announcements of some of the smaller initiatives, we did appreciate the effort on some of the smaller but softer things that would be required to improve people's access to opportunity, such as the remedial education, such as the focus on adult literacy and so on. These things might be easily dismissed, but they can have a huge impact
I'm seeing that
on the economy as we go forward.
I'm seeing that, the AMCHAM would have approved and given a favorable response to some of the at-risk initiatives for especially young people that was presented via the budget. I want to go further afield in the remaining 3 minutes, really quick, to get your perspective on the geopolitics of the day and what's the impact on our budget. Ultimately, we're going into a year of uncertainty. There's a U.S. election cycle literally weeks away. We're looking at developments in the Middle East. That Ukraine scenario is still impacting, in terms of oil and gas and how we maneuver within the global space. What's your take on the geopolitics of the day and its impact on our budget going into 2025?
Well, I think we've seen, for example, you started with the U.S. If President Trump were to win, it would put pressure on our relations with Venezuela and possibly our arrangements to try and access their gas. Whether those licenses will be revoked or not renewed is left to be seen. But I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that that is a very real possibility. But as you said, we will know very soon, and then we'll have a few months to prepare because the US president doesn't take office until January, even though the election would be in November. But we should be thinking about alternatives in that event. I think that if Vice President Harris is elected, the likelihood of continuation of the policies toward Venezuela and therefore our ability to access the gas is higher. And therefore that could be good for us or would be good for us. In terms of the geopolitics, it's really hard to say. I mean, the bigger threat would be what's happening in the Gulf and what happens with oil exports and therefore the impact on prices and production and supply. Because on the one hand, that might push gas prices up, which is what we should be more concerned about than oil. But it could also lead to inflationary pressures, and given our high levels of imports, that could also be a challenge for us here in Trinidad and Tobago. We believe that if we focus on a nearshoring strategy and we work with the US to bring more business opportunities back to the Americas and insert Trinidad and Tobago in a very deliberate way, it will help to hedge some of that risk because it will create export opportunities and foreign exchange opportunities. And so we have been advocating for a very deliberate nearshoring strategy that covers the tech sector, but also the manufacturing sector as we go forward. And we see some of it. But we felt if it's one area that we felt the budget could have been a little stronger on was creating income generating and productive activities outside of the oil and gas sector.
Well said, Mr. Tawari. As always, a sincere thanks for coming on this morning. Send my regards to all there at AMCHAM T&T, and we will be touching base, I'm sure, before the end of calendar year 2024. All the best.
Thanks a lot. All the best to you and your team as well.
Neeraj Tawari, CEO of AMCHAM T&T. We take that pause, we come back and open the lines, open forum. What's your take on the cricket last night? Let me find out, and of course, any other developments, feel free to share. See you soon.